Hola, ¿qué tal? ¿Qué tal? Buenas tardes. Bueno, sería bueno ver si está saliendo mi audio. Tengo un tema de monitor que no me escucho, entonces eh, creo que inclusive la música, a ver si ahí debería estar saliendo un poco la música de fondo de NASA que estamos esperando eh, justamente para poder ver nada, ni para poder escuchar en realidad, porque esto de hoy es una teleconferencia y acaba de comenzar. Es una conferencia de prensa donde van a hablar sobre justamente el rodaje. Van a sacar del gran hangar donde fue armado el SLS, el primer comete de la misión Artemis 1, y lo van a llevar al sitio de lanzamiento. Lo van a llenar de combustible y van a hacer una prueba, como si fuera un lanzamiento, un ensayo. Los que van a estar son Tom Whitmire, que es el administrador asociado para la exploración de NASA, Mike Sarafin, que es el administrador de la misión Artemis. Quien está hablando ahora es una especialista de prensa en este momento.
To roll out to the launch pad 39B at NASA's Kennedy Space Center in Florida for the first time. At the launch pad, the rocket and spacecraft will undergo
el rollout, o sea, la llevada al cohete, va a ser dentro de 3 días, el 17. Y el rollout va a ser en horario de la tarde, de la noche. Bueno, paso a saludar Franco Milazzo, que estaba allí saludando al principio. Acaba de aterrizar, dice. José Leobardo Ortiz también saluda. Alejandro Alós, Diego Ferradanz. Y bueno, hay un montón de gente más. Muchas gracias a todos por estar acá. Desde Barcelona, San Cugat, saluda a Eric Johansson.
After a brief opening comments from each of our speakers, we will take your questions. You can enter *1 on your phone to be entered in the question queue at any time. Your phones are on mute now, and the operator will open your mic when we're ready.
Molesta ahí la voz en inglés. Estaría bueno saberlo. La idea de esto es, yo voy a escuchar, voy a tratar de hacer quizás algunos comentarios en español, va a estar en inglés esto. Si hay alguna pregunta que yo pueda contestarla con mucho gusto. Pero quiero ver qué es lo que dicen. Estamos muy entusiasmados, dice Tom Whitmire.
For folks, the first the rolling out of the VAB, that's really an iconic moment for this vehicle.
Es un momento icónico, dice, que saquemos a este vehículo del hangar y llevarlo al sitio de lanzamiento. Es algo muy bueno también para el país.
So in a few minutes I'm going to turn it over to Charlie and then John and then Howard and Mike. But before I do that, I just want to talk about a couple things about the vehicle.
Dice, quiero aclarar un par de cosas sobre el vehículo.
And then afterwards, we're going to have we'll have another session, Antonia. We'll do one right before the wet dress rehearsal, and then we'll have one after the wet dress rehearsal, and then we'll have a final session before launch. So we'll have plenty of opportunities to answer questions.
Bueno, dice, va a haber dos oportunidades más todavía para poder contestar las preguntas de la prensa. No nos acreditamos esto, no mandamos a tiempo la solicitud de acreditación.
How much thrust it has. I want to talk about the people behind the vehicle for a few seconds, and then I'll turn it over to these other folks so they can talk about getting ready to roll it. You know, for SLS, Orion, and Exploration Ground Systems, we have over 3,800 suppliers in all 50 states of this country. The program creates jobs and people and communities throughout the country.
Está hablando un poco de la cantidad de gente y empresas que trabajan en esto, ¿no? Más de 300 proveedores. Dice todo en distintos lugares de los Estados Unidos.
So, you know, a lot of times when I walk around, I live in D.C., you'll see people wearing NASA shirts. And I think that you walk to other parts of the country, you see people wearing NASA shirts. And let me just say for everybody out there, the people that read these articles, that filled out our passport, we have an artist's passport that a lot of people, over 1 million people have filled out, who are going to watch this rollout or watch the launch and even watch the journey to the moon and back, that we're really grateful to have you part of our team. And we really think that that's a great part of what we do. This type of work is uniquely challenging. This kind of vehicle is a very difficult vehicle because it's such a capable vehicle. It's an exploration class rocket.
Bueno, dice, este vehículo, este cohete, dice, es algo muy especial, dice, es muy complejo, dice, porque es un cohete de exploración, o sea, para el espacio profundo.
There are people throughout this agency who have been working on this vehicle to get it ready for today. And these are women scientists and men scientists, rocket scientists, engineers, technicians at facilities throughout our NASA centers. So we have folks at the Ames Ames Research Center in the ArcJet facility. We've got people at Langley who do wind tunnel stuff. We have bipropellant testing at White Sands. Glenn does, Goddard Space Flight Center does deep space communication and then planetary design at JPL. Thermovac testing at Glenn. Engine testing at Stennis. Manufacturing development at Math. Materials testing, structural testing, software testing at Marshall. Environmental testing, crew training, human factors at the Johnson Space Center, and the ground system development activity at KSC. And this is just kind of a handful of things. It takes a large number of folks working in different areas on different technologies, women and men, rocket scientists, to really have a vehicle like this that we're about to roll out. We think it's of value to the country, besides the physical hardware that you're about to see. The Orion program alone, Howard will talk about Orion here in a few minutes, had over 900 design analysis and test reports that we provided to some of our other NASA spacecraft providers. So it's a national investment, and from my perspective, it's a strong national investment on international engagement in our economy. And so with that, I'm really grateful for that. We're grateful that we have bipartisan support and support across a number of administrations. And so when you see this rocket, it's not just a piece of metal that's going to sit at the pad. It's a whole bunch of people, rocket scientists.
Hasta ahora está hablando un poco sobre la gente que ha trabajado, la cantidad de gente involucrada que hay detrás de eso. Dice, cuando veamos el cohete, en realidad, dice, se van a dar cuenta, dice, o sea, vamos, hay un montón de gente.
Hello everyone,
no dijo nada.
Thompson. I'm the Artemis launch director. And, you know, Tom touched on it, but teams here at Kennedy and really across the country have been working diligently leading up to this milestone known as rollout and preparing for wet dress, which is to come, and I'll talk about that in just a few minutes. You know, we've been busy in the VAB, in the Vehicle Assembly Building. We had a test regime that looked at all different facets of the integration between the elements, between the ground systems, the communication systems. We did functional
Hay muchísimas cosas en las que estuvimos trabajando. Todos los está describiendo todos los sistemas del cohete.
Testing, flight termination system testing. We also performed
y todos los chequeos que se han hecho, inclusive hasta del sistema determinado de vuelo.
And all of these are really leading us up to our readiness to roll. We just finished up our pre-test briefing a few minutes ago.
Hace unos minutos, dice, finalizamos el chequeo previo. Dice, o sea, la charla de chequeo previo.
But this is a very exciting time, and I'm happy to report that as we went through our briefing materials and we looked at the readiness of the pad, looked at the readiness of the vehicle, of the launch control system and the launch control center, as well as our teams, we are in very good shape and ready to proceed with this roll on Thursday evening. So it's going to be
bueno, de todos los chequeos que han hecho, dice, el resultado es que tienen todo pronto, justamente para hacer el rollout el próximo jueves. Es algo muy, muy especial, no va a dejar sin imaginación. Alejandro Alos dice, Dani, consultó, ¿sabe usted algo de la empresa Spin Launch y trabaja un lanzador de cohete a través de las fuerzas centrífugas? Sí, hay algo, pero no hay mucha información sobre eso. Y lo que han hecho es un vehículo de escala, un lanzador demostrador de tecnología. Creo que no estaba escuchando, pero creo que este es Mike Sarafin, que es el administrador del programa Artemis para la NASA. Tenemos muchos chequeos todavía, dice, para hacer en este cohete. Hay miles de componentes que se chequean a nivel de componentes. Charlie dice, habló un poco sobre eso, directora del programa de lanzamiento.
test that we did. We're almost finished with that, but we're going to be taking some additional measurements on the roll to the pad, and so we'll.
Dice, bueno, vamos a hacer todavía un montón de mediciones más en camino hacia el sitio del lanzamiento. Hablan mucho del trabajo que han hecho en el VAB, ¿no? VAB dicen, ¿no? Y el VAB se refiere al edificio de montaje del vehículo. Vamos a escuchar mucho quizás eso. Bueno, va a hablar el director del programa Orion, Howard Hugh, que es él.
Let's see, I think you've heard the excitement in our voices. It's a great week for the agency and
esta es una semana increíble para la agencia.
Certainly I'm looking forward to seeing Orion launch on Artemis 1 with this rollout of a great launch vehicle.
Jorge dice, yo aún no creo que vuele este año. Vamos a ver qué pasa ahora el jueves. Ahí es la prueba de fuego de esto, ¿no?
We've done a tremendous amount of work. John mentioned about his testing. We've certainly done our share of testing across thousands of components as well,
está hablando de todos los chequeos que hicieron, miles de chequeos, los chequeos de los miles de componentes.
It's been a culmination of a tremendous amount of work by not only our NASA Civil Service, but dedicated team across the country of many.
Dice, no solo el trabajo es de la NASA y de la gente que dedica esto, sino gente que está en todos sitios alrededor del país, refiriéndose a los Estados Unidos.
And they play a very important role in all the pieces and parts of Orion.
Y que todos tienen una parte muy importante en lo que es el Orión. El Orión o Orion, como se dice en inglés, se refiere a la cápsula. En este caso, si lanzan, va a volar vacía, ¿no? Pero es la prueba de certificación para luego lanzar con astronautas.
Artemis 1 is such an important mission for us, not just to get our first step to human space exploration and continuing that for the agency and the country, but also it's gathering very critical engineering data and validating our performance capability as a spacecraft for our next mission and beyond, Artemis 2.
Bueno, dice que esto es importantísimo justamente para el programa porque la gran cantidad de datos que van a poder recabar de ese vuelo, de ese lanzamiento, dice, va a servir para validar información crítica de esa cápsula para las futuras, para los futuros vuelos de exploración que van a hacer. Lo más importante, dice, justamente es poder transportar y traer a los tripulantes con seguridad.
Our team, what they've accomplished so far, and what we're about to accomplish with the entire Artemis team. It's just a dream and a great opportunity for everybody as we are able to embark on Artemis 1. And on behalf of the Orion team, we are ready to go.
Bueno, estoy contento, está saludando a su gente, dice, estamos pronto para seguir adelante. Este es el administrador de la misión, Artemis, Mike Serafin.
Charlie and John and Howard talked about our operations teams, whether it's Charlie's launch operations team or Rick LeBrode and the flight operations team out of Mission Control in Houston, or the recovery operations team.
Está nombrando a todos los equipos que están que trabajan en esto, ¿no? El centro de Houston, la recuperación de la cápsula, la Navy. Toda la gente que hace el chequeo, testing. Nos seguimos entrenando, inclusive como equipo, para poder hacer el primer lanzamiento. Recién tuvimos un evento de entrenamiento y el equipo está pronto. Rosa Sierra, que se suma, gracias Rosa.
Early March on the 2nd, we did a recovery landing site selection simulation. And
David Amengol también.
When we come back from low Earth orbit at the International Space Station, we're 250 miles away from Earth. And we can watch the weather right up to the point where we undock and come home and commit to come home that day. But for Artemis missions, when we come back from the moon, it's a very different situation. And we trained that just inside of 2 weeks ago. And when we come back from the moon, it's about 4 days coast at a minimum. And a 250,000 miles away, we're about 1,000 times farther.
Está comparando lo que es la vuelta de la Luna y la vuelta de la Estación Espacial Internacional. Muy diferente.
We've set our entry trajectory line, and what we can do to manage the landing site conditions and the weather conditions is to change our landing site up and down that trajectory line. So we can go over 1,000 miles uprange if we want from our nominal landing site. And we train together to understand the weather, the health of the spacecraft, and our ability to position the ship to receive the spacecraft at the chosen site to manage through the weather conditions that are unique to lunar return missions. And the team did extraordinarily well. In addition to that, we are well into our flight readiness review process, which is a thorough wire brushing of our understanding of the mission ahead and our ability to achieve mission success, as well as the holistic risk to mission success. And the team has again, through John Honeycutt's Space Launch System Program review and Howard's Orion Program review and a number of other reviews that have been conducted,
Albert saluda de Lugo, gracias.
That they are ready and understand the risk and are very clear about communicating what those risks are. And we'll hear more about those as we head towards the agency flight readiness review that will be led by Jim Free. But overall, I would just say that when we see the rollout for wet dress rehearsal, we need to just be mindful that there were thousands of hands that touched the software and the hardware, and the vehicle came in piece parts. Some of them are very, very large. 212 foot tall was our core stage when it arrived.
Bueno, está hablando, está haciendo un recuento de lo que han hecho, lo que han armado, todas las partes del cohete que se han integrado allí en el BAB, como le llaman ellos, BAB, que es el edificio de montaje de vehículos.
I'm very excited about Thursday. So that's it for me. I'll turn it back to Tony.
Bueno, y no dijo nada. Pasó con Tommy Wedmeyer, administrador asociado de NASA para sistemas de exploración. Bueno, vienen seguramente, como ya hablaron todos ahora, y lo que están diciendo son las instrucciones para hacer las preguntas. Vienen las preguntas de la prensa. No estamos acreditados, no mandamos a tiempo nuestra solicitud de acreditación.
Take place and get to the pad within, the 12 hours or so on the Thursday evening, what is the time and date that fueling would start? And for Charlie, can you just walk us through what kind of weather conditions need to
¿Cómo va a estar el tiempo? ¿Y qué tiempo se necesita para poder hacer el rollout el próximo jueves?
Tall booster? Thanks.
Irene, I'm going to let Charlie tell you both the dates for the cryo loading for wet dress and also the constraints for the rollout. Those are both great questions. Thank you.
All right. So provided that we roll and everything is as we expect it to be, our call to stations would happen on April 1st. And then our T0, which of course we're not going to go all the way down to T0. We're going to go down just inside T minus 10 seconds, but that would be on the 3rd. And so we would start our tanking operations that morning. Somewhere around 7 o'clock local time, we'll start our tanking operations on the 3rd.
Pregunta Rosa si hay una caminata aproximadamente. Mañana hay una caminata espacial, pero tenemos también el lanzamiento del cohete Astra, el Rocket 3 de Díaz. Entonces estamos evaluando a ver cómo hacemos. Si empezamos con la caminata espacial y entre medio hacemos el lanzamiento también, sin cortar.
Wet dress rehearsal, and again, all of those activities will happen on the 3rd.
Yeah, and Charlie, Rain, and this is John Honeycutt and I did a lot of shuttle work. We went through a lot of cryo loadings. Charlie, how do you compare the time it takes us to load this vehicle to the shuttle?
That's a great question, Tom. So back in shuttle, you probably remember it took about 2.5 hours or so to load. We start our loading about 8 hours prior. So it's a significantly longer loading timeline. That's for a couple of reasons. The first
2 horas y media, dice, les lleva a cargar el cohete.
And so, there's a lot of hydrogen to go load. It's also, there's an upper stage that we didn't have in shuttle, and so we stagger the loads between the core stage and the upper stage. And then let's see weather. So for roll,
gracias, Jesús González.
So we have, we will not roll if there's a greater than 10% chance of lightning within 20 nautical miles.
David pregunta si compra algo en la tienda, ¿cuánto tarda en llegar a Cataluña, España? Seguramente poco tiempo, porque creo que ya tienen solucionados los temas de la pandemia. La empresa de la tienda en realidad tiene 2 depósitos en Europa y 2 en Estados Unidos. Así que no debería haber mucha demora. No sé cómo está el tema de los envíos ahora en Europa con el tema de Ucrania, ¿no?
I did get my first weather briefing this morning at 7:45 with the launch weather officer. We do expect to have a little bit of precip here and potentially some inclement weather on Wednesday, but right now the forecast looks really nice for roll on Thursday. So let's
Bueno, dice que el tiempo parece que va a haber mal tiempo antes, o sea, pasado mañana, pero el jueves, que es el día que van a hacer el rollout del cohete, o sea, sacarlo del edificio de integración y llevarlo al lanzamiento, va a estar bueno. Dice que va a estar muy bueno. Y otra de las cosas es que no solo lo van a llevar al sitio de lanzamiento, sino que van a hacer una prueba con combustible. O sea, lo van a llenar de combustible como si fuera un lanzamiento, van a hacer todo el conteo hasta unos 15-20 segundos antes de la hora prevista del lanzamiento y ahí cancelan. O sea, no hay encendido. 11 horas le lleva llevar este cohete desde el sitio de integración hasta el del lanzamiento. Con esa mega grúa. Jesús dice, ¿me puedes explicar qué es lo que estás compartiendo? Estamos asistiendo a una teleconferencia de prensa de la NASA, es solo audio, donde están el administrador asociado, que es Tom Whitmeyer, Mike Serafín, que es el administrador de la misión Artemis, el director del lanzamiento, que es quien está hablando ahora, que es Charlie Bagwell, John Honeycutt, que es el administrador del programa de lanzamiento, del programa de SLS, y el administrador del programa Orion, Howard Hughes. Ya han hablado todo uno de ellos, en este momento está el momento de las preguntas de prensa y se estaban refiriendo al tema del clima y del tiempo de carga de combustible. Esto es lo previo al próximo jueves, que es cuando se va a lanzar, se va a hacer el ensayo de lanzamiento de este cohete. ¿Por qué lo estamos compartiendo? Bueno, yo estoy asistiendo a esa teleconferencia de prensa y quizás hay cosas únicas que se escuchan ahora que creo que vale la pena. No las estoy traduciendo, pero algunas de las cosas que interpreto las comparto con ustedes en español.
And try how you say the movement of the vehicles as we take it out to the pad. So that's one of the tests we'll be running.
Thank you. Next up is Steve Gorman with Reuters.
Son 6 kilómetros que hay desde el edificio de integración hasta el sitio de lanzamiento donde se va a hacer la prueba.
Looks like we lost Steve. Next up then is David Curley with the Discovery Channel.
Thank you very much. Tom, quick question. ASAP has talked about NASA having a almost split personality, becoming commercial crew on one side and running programs on one side, which is you. Do you feel like this is the last one? Is it changed the way you operate at all? And how does it mark the future?
Yeah, let me think about it. Dave, that's a good question. It's kind of a philosophical question. You know, we talked a little bit, when I started off with today, I talked a little bit about all the parts of the agency that are behind this type of a vehicle and the research and testing that the women and the men, the rocket scientists that we have do to prepare for this type of a vehicle. I think there's going to be kind of a hybrid in the future, and you hear this a lot from the agency, that there's this work that the agency needs to do. You know, I live in D.C., we have a National Institute of Health there, and it's got a
Iván Alexander dice, ¿para cuándo está programado el lanzamiento definitivo? Bueno, no han querido comprometerse. Dice que eso depende de los resultados de esta prueba que van a hacer. Seguramente luego de la prueba de esta va a haber una nueva conferencia de prensa donde van a anunciar los resultados y muy posiblemente la primera fecha tentativa.
that, and even for our program, David, we plan on over a period of time of turning production over to the contractors and having them take more of a lead, and then folks like myself and the folks that you're hearing from today will get on to some new development activities. So I just feel that there'll always be this role that the agency has to play. We are the shepherder of the civilian space program for this country. I think we're doing a pretty good job when it comes to that. There will always be these research scientists and these facilities. If you go visit Marshall Space Flight Center where John is, the Johnson Space Center where Howard is, you'll see a bunch of buildings there. And in those buildings there are actual test equipment and material labs and all these things. I think that part of the agency's responsibility will always continue. And then we will have developments come through, and as one development, like our development, over a period of time, we'll get through some test flights, we'll do all this analysis and testing, and then we'll begin to turn that over. And both the program managers always have plans to do that right now, and the agency will start focusing on the next set of challenges. So to me, it's always going to be a hybrid. There's always this fundamental responsibility the agency has in the aerospace industry, and I think we're always going to be doing that. But we will always look for opportunities to reduce our cost and look for opportunities to kind of begin to handle things over to the industry after a period of time, and then look for new challenges. I'm sorry, David, that was a long answer to your short question, but that's kind of how I would see it.
Thank you, Tom. Next up, we have Stephen Clark with Spaceflight Now.
Stephen Clark de Space
Hi, thank
Right
you for
Now.
taking my question. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Great. I think my question is probably for Charlie as well. Can you walk us through what schedule, sort of day by day, if you can, after the rollout leading up to that April 1st call to station?
Está pidiendo cómo va a ser el calendario luego que lleven el vehículo al sitio de lanzamiento para
what sort of activities over those
ensayo.
couple of weeks between the rollout and the WDR?
Absolutely, be happy to walk you through that. So we have about 2 weeks of work.
2 semanas de trabajo que tienen una vez que lleven el vehículo al sitio de lanzamiento y hagan
but of course those 5 or 6 things are
o
fairly
hagan,
complicated. The first is that we're going to get out to the pad and we're going to do all of our connects. So we'll do the connections between the mobile.
Lo primero es llevarlo al sitio de lanzamiento, que lleva 11 o 12 horas, y luego comenzar a hacer las conexiones.
That's, you know, all of the interfaces between the pad and EML. We'll go through those connections. Then we get into what we call validations as part of that, so making
Luego de hacer las conexiones hacen lo que le llaman la validación.
And then we get into some of our pad PSET testing activity.
Y ahí comienzan a hacer las actividades de chequeos
involve some of our communication
para probar las comunicaciones.
To do it in the pad or the launch environment. We also have some testing that we'll do for EMI and EMC characterization. Once we finish up with what we call our pad PSET testing, which is very similar to what we did in the VAB, but in the pad environment, so it's some functional tests that we'll do at the pad.
Bueno, después de hacer los chequeos propios allí en el sitio de lanzamiento, dice, vamos a hacer los chequeos que se hicieron similares en el sitio de integración.
And then we'll get into wet dress itself, which will run about 2 days. It'll very closely follow what we would do for launch countdown.
Dice, a los 2 días, dice, haremos al final el chequeo propiamente dicho, lo que le llaman el wet dress rehearsal, o sea, el ensayo con combustibles. Recuerden que parte de lo que es esto que se llama wet dress rehearsal es cargar con todo el combustible criogénico, los propelentes, y obviamente quitárselos también.
Following the work that's going to be done on the 3rd, at what point would then the rocket be rolled back to the VAB for?
¿Cuántos días después de que se lleve el vehículo allí va a volver de nuevo para atrás para llevarlo al sitio de montaje, al edificio de montaje?
Let's see, just looking at the schedule, so we do have a set of work that is planned, of course, after we get through our wet dress objectives. We go through and we drain, inert, make sure that we got everything safe, ready to finish up our wet dress, I would say, post-ops. We also have some deservicing of the boosters that we'll do before we roll back, and then we get right into our preps for roll. And just kind of looking at the schedule here, it's about It's a little over a week or so that we've
Una
got
semana más o
work
menos.
there. It's about 8 days of work, 8 or 9 days of work.
8 días de trabajo. Dice, luego
And
de
of course,
7 8 días de
we'll wait
trabajo
and
es
see
cuando
what
van
comes out of
a
wet dress.
volver
We'll
otra vez
learn
con el
something
vehículo,
new, and
con
there's always these chances
el
that we'll
cohete
spend a little more time on wet dress
al
or
edificio de
something
montaje,
coming out of wet dress
al
we have to
VAB.
spend a little more time on. So generally speaking, that's
VAB.
the timeline of the events, and we hope to have that kind of a timeline, but we also recognize that it's a highly complicated vehicle and a very complicated machine called the ML.
Dice, es un vehículo realmente muy complicado.
And so we'll wait and see what comes out of the wet dress, and then that's the point. I think we'll be in a good position as an agency to set a launch date. And it's only 2 weeks, it's a couple of weeks away, so we're really getting close to being able to do that for you.
Dice, vamos un par de semanas
Next
después
up, we
vamos
have
a tener
Steve Gorman
seguramente
with
la fecha
Reuters.
tentativa de lanzamiento.
Yeah, hi. Have you heard okay?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, thank you. So I guess this is a question for Mr. Whitmire. My question is if whether with the sort of heightened tensions between the United States and Russia at the moment, and particularly with some of the kind of rather bellicose statements have been made by the head of Roscosmos in the last couple of weeks, whether that's had any effect on operations, cooperation between NASA and Roscosmos, particularly on the as it pertains to the International Space Station, whether crew exchange talks are still underway, whether talks are still underway for.
Está preguntando por la relación entre Roscosmos, por el tema de la guerra, ¿no? Y las declaraciones que han hecho, y está preguntando sobre la Estación Espacial
whether there's still
Internacional,
exchanges of
no
astronauts and
sobre esto.
cosmonauts between Baikonur and Johnson Space Center and things like that.
Yeah, Steve, I know those are really important questions, and Tony will be able to kind of redirect you folks to the parts of the agency that are directly involved in that and can provide you the best answer. It's a great
Dice que van a redireccionar la pregunta a alguien que se la pueda contestar propiamente. Obviamente, esto se trata del rollout, no son los administradores.
And the rest of the PAO team after this, and we'll point you in that right direction. Next up, we have Ramin Skiba with Wired Magazine.
Hi, I have a lot of questions, but I'll stick to one. I think this one is for Charlie. So I'm wondering, for how much of this will be televised, and what will there be for for viewers to be able to see?
Hey, this is Tony with NASA PAO. So we are planning on live streaming the event for wet dress rehearsal and for rollout, and we will make sure to send that information out to the media so that they can tune in as followed. Thank you.
Bueno, los horarios para la cobertura y dice que se lo van a mandar a la prensa
thank you for taking my question and thank you for doing this event for us. I recall with excitement a few years ago when Artemis was first announced, and that the plan had been to land the first woman on the moon sometime in the 2024 frame or so. And I wondered what the latest timing might be for this, first of all, for Artemis 1 to launch, and then beyond that, Artemis 2 and so on.
Yeah, Jim, this is Tom. Let me take a cut at that. And first of all, I have a counterpart who works over in at the campaign level, Mark Karasich, and he's the best person to talk about the lunar mission that we coming up on Artemis 3. We're really excited about this first woman and first person of color to land on the lunar surface, which we really think is an important part of what this agency does, and so we're really proud of that. Artemis 1, of course, we're hoping to know in a couple of weeks. We'll do a wet dress rehearsal. Charlie will help us out, and we'll get through wet dress, and we'll be able to set it.
Le preguntaron creo que por la fecha de cuándo van a tener el primer hombre y la primera mujer en la Luna, ¿no? Y eso es en la misión Artemis 3, falta muchísimo todavía para eso.
And then 3 is coming in after that, and it will, I don't want to give a date right now, but I would ask Mark to provide that information to you. We're also doing that in partnership with
Se le va a pasar la pregunta a Mike Serafín, el administrador de la misión Artemis.
But I would almost say I actually am a support Mark. I provide a service to Mark for that integrated mission, and we can kind of point that question in his direction and give you more specific information on that.
Thank you. Next up, we have Jim McDade with 1819 News.
Good evening. My question is directed at John Honeycutt, but first I want to say congratulations to all of you for leading your respective teams through the difficult years of a COVID pandemic, funding battles, related work stoppages, and all of the other difficulties you faced, but congratulations on that. John, I'm old enough to remember when that first Saturn V test vehicle rolled out of the VAB back in May of 1966. That was 56 years ago, believe it or not. I want to know basically how many people from Huntsville will be working this wet test, and if you could briefly describe what the role of the Huntsville team will be.
¿Cuánta gente va a estar trabajando en el rollout? Me preguntan.
Yeah, I'll certainly take a shot at that, and I don't have the exact numbers, but we can follow up with that.
No tengo los números exactos.
It's on the order of probably 200 or something like that.
Alrededor de los 200, dice.
We've got what we call a Huntsville Operations Support Center that'll be staffed primarily with engineering support for the mission management team, as well as the engineering team that are boots on the ground here to support as really the design center and work through any issues that we may see on day of launch. Charlie, you want to add something?
Yeah, so what I would add to that is, we're, as a launch director and a launch control team, we are really blessed to have a great group of, within our team, our support team, both for Orion and for SLS. And so when we have any kind of anomaly discussions or anything that comes up, the design centers are very much a part of those discussions as we work our way through any challenges, and we resolve them, put them behind us, develop flight rationale. So, when we think about it, while, yes, there are folks that are sitting in Huntsville, and there are folks that are sitting at the Johnson Space Center and in other, remote sites from our suppliers across all of our programs, we really work as one team on launch day. And to me, that's such a gift as a launch director, is to know that you've got that ops team and you've got that design center and that engineering support team behind you. And so that's why I have such confidence in whatever, we see on either wet dress or launch day, we're going to be ready for it.
Yeah, Jim, I agree with Charlie on this one, too. John, the Marshall Space Flight Center team's outstanding, just as in the Johnson team's outstanding, too. David had a question earlier about what's the future of the agency, and I can tell you that that's the agency's future is strong, and it's that type of engineering expertise and technical expertise that people like Charlie rely on launch date. It's just such a vital part of what we're doing, and we really think there's a strong future for that. I'm like Charlie, very proud to have known these folks and work with these folks and see the work they do. Cryo loading is really tricky stuff. Engine start sequence is one of the most amazing things. This machine that we have is probably one of the most complicated machines in the world, and these folks are really, really great. And so, I don't know if I did a good enough job when I
Esta gente de la NASA sí que sabe aburrir al público, dice Franco Lazo. Bueno, sí, en realidad yo sinceramente esperaba un poco más de la prensa que está acreditada en las preguntas. Están preguntando cosas, digo, que creo que no vale a veces la pena ni siquiera traducir ni lo que dicen, porque...
Thank you. Next up, we have Chelsea Goad with Space.com.
Space.com, a ver, Space.com, a ver qué pasa.
Hi, thank you so much for taking my question. So obviously there's always a lot of excitement when the crawler gets to come out, but seeing as the vehicle, while still functioning incredibly well, is over 50 years old, what are the biggest risks or challenges that are present during a rollout?
La grúa, la gigante esa que lleva el cohete, es viejaza, dice. Si hay, puede haber algún tema con el tema de la grúa.
Yeah, it's been 50 years since we've sent a
50 años.
capable vehicle.
Pero es un vehículo muy capaz.
I wasn't here for the Saturn days. I always wished I had a chance to see one of the Saturn launches. It would have been spectacular. This vehicle's that big. I live in Washington D.C. It's a little bit shorter than the Washington Monument. So if you ever get a chance to walk around Washington D.C., it's a really big vehicle. And even with that, it takes every ounce of performance that we can provide to be able to do these missions. Mike will tell you that we're always kind of checking every ounce in the vehicle to make sure we're getting the best possible performance. But I made the Star Wars analogy. The crawler transporter, if you ever see it up close, is the most phenomenal thing I've ever seen. The mobile launcher is just an incredible structure, and we moved that whole crawler transporter and mobile launcher of a rocket as big as the Saturn V out to the pad. So, Charlie, it is quite an incredible feat. Any thoughts on that? I mean, it's really, believe me, this is a very different vehicle than what we normally see here in Florida, and hasn't been something like this for quite some time, so it's going to be pretty cool.
Oh, it's going to be amazing. And with respect to the crawler, I mean, while she has been in operation for 50-plus years, I mean, she underwent significant upgrade as part of getting
Ha
ready
estado
for
en
this
funcionamiento
vehicle.
durante todos
And,
estos
you know, we've
años
rolled the
y
email to the
ha
pad a
pasado
number of
por
times.
una
Never seen an
mejora
issue with the crawlers. We've
y
also gone and done
adiciones de
crawler
equipos
weight conditioning, where
sustanciales
we actually loaded it up
y
even
ha sido
heavier
puesta en
than we expected
condiciones
to be
justamente para hacer
on
esto.
roll day. And so,
Están
you
hablando
know,
de la grúa gigante que
while the
lleva
original
el
crawler
cohete hacia el sitio
was
de
over 50
lanzamiento.
years ago, I mean, we
Esos
have done
6 y algo de
significant upgrades in
kilómetros que hay entre el
preparation
edificio de
for
integración,
rolling this
el
vehicle to the
denominado
pad and for Artemis
VAB,
operations.
y la plataforma
Thank
de
you. We
lanzamiento
have time for one
39.
final question. Michael Greshko from National Geographic, your line is now open.
National Geographic, a ver qué preguntan.
Thank you so much. I think this is perhaps a group question, though, Tom and Charlie, I'd love your thoughts on this. You know, this moment obviously fits into a legacy of firsts going back more than 50 years to Apollo 4, referenced earlier, and STS-1. You know, on a personal note, how do you reflect on Artemis 1, SLS Orion's place within that legacy? And if you've had the chance to have these conversations, what has it been like to speak with people who were in your shoes with Saturn V and Shuttle?
Les está preguntando, digo, si pudieras hablar con la gente que ha estado en tu misma posición cuando las misiones anteriores. ¿Qué les preguntarías? ¿Qué les dirías? A la generación de hace 50 años.
John and I have done a lot of shuttle stuff, as Charlie has too. And everybody, Mike and Howard have a lot of experience as well. So we've all had an opportunity to see some pretty incredible things throughout our career. I think this is really going to stand out as just, you know, you get in this business, you kind of get size and scale. You kind of get used to a certain size and scale. I think we were pretty well turned to that during the shuttle program. And every time I see this vehicle, and I'll let
Franco Milazzo dice, por eso, capitán, no hablo de tu participación, pero como bien decís, las preguntas son siempre las mismas y honestamente creo que se podrían hacer preguntas más interesantes. Sí, el tema es que la NASA generalmente elige para que pregunten o acredita generalmente primero a los grandes medios y lamentablemente las preguntas que hacen sí son muy limitadas. Ramiro Rayo dice, ¿van a usar muchas partes del transbordador? O sea que volverá para salvar la ISS. No, son dos cosas diferentes. La misión Artemis es una misión de exploración espacial profunda, o sea, para ir a la Luna y quizás para ir a Marte. Eso hay que verlo. Lo que sí quieren con esto es poder viajar 4 días, 3 a la Luna, orbitarla, volver a la Tierra por los 4 días, les lleva aproximadamente, y aterrizar. En esta primera misión. Luego van a extenderlas, van a tratar de hacer la estación espacial en Marte, que es la Gateway, y luego de allí van a tratar de llevar gente a la superficie de la Luna.
Really blessed, I would say, is, you know, back for the 50th anniversary of Apollo 11,
me río de lo que escribe
back
Franco
the
Milazzo.
launch team to Firing Room 1. This is the very same firing room that we're going to launch Artemis 1 from, and we invited that team back, and we put up our, you know, in the firing room we have these console signs. So we put the console signs up and we ask, you know, for the teams that work prop back in Apollo to find the prop team, and the folks that were test conductors to find and we had an opportunity to visit with all of them. It was a great day, and it was a great day for a number of reasons. But the biggest part was really understanding, you know, where they were at on that day, on that launch day, and them sharing with us and what that felt like, and you know, even some of the, you know, the change traffic and things that they were dealing with as they got ready for that launch. And it was a wonderful day. And so have I had that opportunity? Yes, I've had that opportunity with some STS-1 folks. Bob Seek, I still speak with him regularly, former launch director, also around for STS-1, also around during Apollo. So So how do we fit in to all that? I don't know if I've sorted through, you know, how we fit versus where they were, but what I will say is it's great, you know, in this NASA family of ours, it's great to be able to reach back, learn from others, hear their
Muchas gracias, Franco Vilazo. Lo dejo esto para el aporte para recargar los propulsores y nos hace una donación. Muchísimas gracias, Franco, por esa donación. En realidad las respuestas, dice, bueno, estamos en contacto mucho con gente que trabajó en las misiones, en nuestras posiciones, en las misiones Apolo. Dice, y no son comparables, son cosas distintas, pero sí es algo espectacular. Digo, en realidad, no aportaron, ni aportó nada tampoco la pregunta de nadie. Lo importante de esto es que, bueno, está en fecha, el próximo jueves va a ser el rollout, vamos a transmitirlo, vamos a programar de acuerdo a los horarios que dé la NASA. Va a llevar entre 6 y 12 horas el traslado de este cohete desde el edificio de integración, el VAB, que es el Vehicle Assembly Building de la NASA en el Kennedy Space Center, el Centro Espacial Kennedy. Y luego van a tener 8 días ese cohete montado ahí en el 39B, en el sitio de lanzamiento del 39B, para hacer la cantidad de chequeos que van a hacer. 2 días previos, o sea, los llevan, luego van a estar 2 días trabajando en él y luego se va a hacer lo que son las pruebas criogénicas, o sea, de cargar combustible y hacer la cuenta regresiva, tal cual como si fuera un lanzamiento. Inclusive, a T-10 van a hacer un llamado de cancelación, o sea, de scrub, para probar que todos los sistemas funcionen tal cual como se les espera. No hay todavía, no tenemos, la prensa no tiene todavía la información de todos los horarios de lo que van a hacer, pero dijeron que lo van a informar oportunamente. Bueno, hoy la empresa SpaceX está cumpliendo 20 años, esa es la noticia en las redes. Creo que es, independientemente de esto y comparable con esto, digo, el desarrollo de lo que es el prototipo que tiene hoy la empresa SpaceX, lo que han logrado en estos últimos 20 años, es inimaginable lo que se puede venir en los próximos 20 o en los próximos 10, ¿no? Recuerden, mañana tenemos el lanzamiento del cohete, ¿no? Porque es el cohete Rocket 3 de la compañía Astra en Kodiak, en Alaska. Lo vamos a estar transmitiendo. Si dejan esto abierto hasta el final, los redirecciona directo al nuevo video, así que pueden activar allí en el recordatorio. Paso a leer los últimos mensajes, a ver qué hay. Franco dice, Darío no tiene chance de acceder a estos eventos. ¿Qué podemos hacer como comunidad para ayudar? Estamos acreditados para el lanzamiento, o sea, estamos acreditados. Solicitamos la acreditación para el lanzamiento de este cohete y para el lanzamiento de la Crew 4. Si nos conceden eso, Darian va a estar en representación de los 2 canales ahí en el Centro Espacial Kennedy y vamos a hacer la transmisión en directo, pero obviamente si va, la transmisión va a ser una transmisión distinta y especial del estilo de la que hicimos cuando el lanzamiento del cohete Antares de Northrop Grumman allí en Wallops, Virginia. Así que Augusto dice que tiene su pasaje para el SLS. Gracias. Saludos también, sí. Desde Malargüe, Argentina, nos saluda Javier Mercado. Yo les agradezco a todos. Yo sé que esto es aburrido. No lo traduzco todo porque obviamente se van siempre por las ramas, hablan de mucha cosa. Digo que quizás queremos ver si hay cosas interesantes realmente para compartir. No quería perdérmela por nada del mundo. Y obviamente creo que era una oportunidad para poder compartirlas con todos ustedes. Así que bueno, les agradezco enormemente que hayan estado acá. Vamos a poner un poquito de música y vamos a cerrar esta transmisión. Un abrazo enorme. Muchísimas gracias. Nos vemos mañana con el lanzamiento del Rocket 3 de Astra. Un abrazo. Chau, chau. A ver si podemos colocar los créditos. Y Rosa dice, gracias por compartir. No, gracias a ustedes. Gracias a los miembros VIP del canal que hacen que justamente que esto sea posible, ¿no? Un abrazo enorme. Nos vemos. Chau, chau, chau. Bueno, suscríbanse al canal también, ¿sí? Considérenlo y activen las notificaciones. Gracias a los que están suscriptos, a los que nos ven y los que dejan el like, ni hablar también. Un abrazo.